He announced that the fourth prince was waiting outside. Lengmo's facial expression changed upon hearing Brunat's name. Caesar ordered him to tell his brother that he had guests and that he would see him after. The attendant insisted that he had already said that, but Brunate still demanded to see him. Caesar was annoyed. He had thought Brunat had gone off to war, but he was already back so fast. He kindly asked Lengmo to wait for a moment there while he met with his brother. It was in the best interest for both of them if Brunate to not see them right now. Lengmo told him there was nothing he could do then. Caesar told them he would meet Brunat in the living room and see what he's up to. Just then, someone interrupted him, saying there was no need to do that. Brunat had come himself to meet him. He had also wanted to meet his guests. This had become a bad situation for them. Bing Yu hoped Brunate didn't recognize Lengmo. Caesar saw them and assumed they were the newly appointed arbitrators. He stated that he had brought the two to congratulate him. The two men gave them a hostile look. Caesar condescendingly praised Brunate for being such a good brother. He blurted out that he had known Brunate was spying on him. He suspected something was wrong since he had come to visit him right after the war had ended. Brunate told him that he had heard the new arbitrators were very strong, so he wanted to check them out himself. His acquaintances were masters he had met on his travels, and he wanted them to meet the pair. They had been itching to have a battle after hearing about their skills. He asked Lengmo and Bing Yu what they thought about it. Caesar realized he had picked such a bad time on purpose, since he knew that they had just come back from their exam with no strength left. If he were to not accept his battle request, then he would mock him for being afraid. But if Lengmo and Bing were to lose, then they might feel humiliated and quit working for him. He was in a precarious situation and didn't understand what to do. Lengmo smiled and told Caesar not to worry. Since they had decided to work for him, they could never betray his trust. The only thing was that they just finished their exams were a little tired. Caesar quickly joined in, saying it was just a little match. He asked the two of them to go ahead and try their best. He was thankful that Lengmo had interrupted him. It had really helped him out. Now Brunate couldn't proceed with his plans. Brunate had a feeling that he had seen Lengmo somewhere before, but he was unable to remember. Caesar asked them to move to the backyard, where they would have some empty space. Brunate told one of his men to go for the first round. The man obeyed his request and took off his robe, revealing himself to be an orc. The orc asked them who was going to fight him. Bing Yu told Caesar to let him handle it. It was going to be his first time fighting an orc. He asked the orc to show him his specialty, the blood rush. Caesar asked if both sides were ready, and Brunate officially began the match. At once, the orc demanded him to use his strongest move. Without wasting a moment, Bing Yu rushed at him and struck him with his elbow. Brunate was shocked while Caesar was pleasantly surprised. The orc was knocked backwards, but he managed to maintain his balance. He told him he was not bad and that his speed was decent, but it was not effective against him. He lifted his arms and swung them straight at Bing Yu. Bing Yu could feel their intense pressure and quickly put his arms in front to block it. The strike made Bing Yu cough out blood. Bing Yu realized he was going to get smashed if he didn't get serious and decided he was going to go all out. Suddenly, the orc felt like something was wrong. Bing Yu activated his aura, sending him flying away. Lengmo and Brunate were taken aback. Bing Yu announced that he was already out of strength and had used up all of his aura. The orc was impressed and told him to go at it again. Lengmo stopped him, saying that he had used all of his aura and had lost, so it was time for the next round. Bing Yu tried to protest, but Lengmo silenced him, saying that he would end up dead if he kept fighting. The other man couldn't believe that it was his turn already. He came forward and told Lengmo to show him what he had. Brunate told him that he had met this master at a valley, and that there had been a dwarven village located nearby. The man took off his robe and revealed himself to be the chief of the village. Lengmo was shocked to see a dwarf. The dwarf's specialty was summoning. Lengmo could sense the phoenix's mark on him and was sure he was a dwarf chief. He assumed he must have been the chief of the tribe with the third holy work. He needed to make sure about whether Brunate had the holy book or not even more now. Caesar couldn't believe his brother had found another dwarf tribe and had even managed to make them work for him. Brunate added that he was not only working for him, but he had even handed over their holy book. They had also pledged to craft weapons for his army. He asked him if he was scared hearing that. The dwarf explained that even though they couldn't use aura, their summoning beasts were the strongest of all. This was bad news for Lengmo. This meant that Brunate already had his hands on 2 dwarf books and had probably obtained the orc's book as well. Lengmo called out to Phoenix asking if he was there. Phoenix asked him if he needed help. He advised him to just kill the traitor without even asking him. Lengmo recalled that Grandma had mentioned Phoenix had summoning powers as part of his abilities. He asked him if he could seal his summoning powers, even temporarily would be fine. Phoenix told him it was a piece of cake. It was settled then. Lengmo also asked him to lend him some fire elements, since his aura hadn't completely recovered. He wanted to kill Brunat with one strike. Brunate asked if both sides were ready and commenced the second round. The dwarf told him he wasn't going to hold back and quickly began summoning a beast. After a while, he noticed that nothing had happened. No beast had emerged from his spell. He didn't know why he had lost connection to his summoned beast. Lengmo told him he was probably not doing it right if he had lost his connection. The dwarf couldn't believe it and thought it to be a mistake. He tried to summon again but was unsuccessful. Lengmo asked him if he was really a dwarf. If the dwarf didn't summon now, then he was going to attack. The dwarf tried again but nothing happened. Caesar was getting excited and asked Brunate if he was really an orc. He told him he must have been fooled by the man. Brunate didn't know what was going on. He knew he had seen him easily summoned before, namely while they had been attacking the dwarves in the forest. If he had lied, then Brunate would have already noticed by now. He realized that this might be happening because of Lengmo. Lengmo told him to stop wasting time and declared that it was his turn. The dwarf was startled. Lengmo activated his aura and charged at the dwarf, telling him to die. That dwarf tried again multiple times, but to no avail. It was too late now, and Lengmo punched him with all his force. The dwarf let out a scream, and before he knew it, he had been turned to ashes. Caesar was impressed with Lengmo's abilities. Brunate was lost for words. Nothing of the dwarf remained. Lengmo wanted to tell him that he was a disgrace to the dwarves. Caesar mocked Brunate, wondering how he had picked someone so weak. Lengmo told him to not get mad since it was just a duel. He had not thought that he would be this weak, and couldn't believe that he was a fake dwarf. Caesar announced that the result had turned out to be a tie for today. He told him he didn't need to thank him for helping him, or expose that fake dwarf. Brunate was angry and simply uttered goodbye before leaving. Caesar was laughing after seeing his face. He told them that he had been standing over him all these years, and he had finally found a way to relieve some anger. He commended both of them for their skills. Lengmo asked him if he could head back to his dorm now. Caesar asked him why he was leaving so soon. He had been thinking of having a party with the two of them. Lengmo reminded him that they were exhausted after today's battle and needed to restore their auras, so maybe they could party some other day. Caesar accepted his request and asked him when they would both start working for him. Lengmo decided he would do so after half a month, because he still had some business to deal with. He would inform Caesar once he was done. Caesar told him it was a done deal and asked them to ride back in his carriage. He was worried that Brunate might do something underhanded to them. Brunate was outside the palace, still thinking about Lengmo. He couldn't understand what had happened back then. He was sure that he had seen Lengmo somewhere before. He tried to remember it and it finally hit him. It was him, the evil lord. He had heard that summoning magic came from the phoenix. Last time, when they had tried to capture the phoenix, Lengmo had been there. He wondered if it was possible that the phoenix was with Lengmo. Things seemed to be getting a lot more interesting. He cursed Caesar for making such a bold move. The pair had returned back to Lengmo's house in Skyway City for a small break. Dayer was trying to stop him from leaving again after he had just returned. He told her it was an emergency and that he promised to come back after he was done. She refused, saying he was going to stay. He promised he would take her out when he was done, and she asked him to buy a bunch of snacks for her. He told her she would get whatever she wanted. Bingyu was listening to them silently. Lengmo asked him if he really didn't want to go with him. Bingyu told him he was not needlessly going anywhere dangerous. He had only told his people back home that he was meeting Brunate. Lengmo was now alone on his journey. He bade the two of them farewell. Dayer was worried, but Bingyu assured her, saying there weren't many people who could beat him these days. Lengmo had arrived back in Skyway City. He handed a large pouch of coins on a counter. He had bought all the materials necessary for a teleportation circle. He was going to transport back to the dwarven village underground in order to rescue them. The only dwarf holy book left was located there, and so he needed to move the dwarves out before Brunate found out. Just then, Phoenix called Lengmo. He informed him that they had a stalker at about a distance of 100 meters at 7 o'clock and told him to not look back. Lengmo figured it must have been one of Brunate's men. The stalker was following him when he suddenly disappeared from his sight. He assumed that Lengmo had noticed him and wondered if he should run or keep following. Suddenly he felt a hand on his shoulder and turned back to see Lengmo questioning why he was following him. He wanted to know who had sent him. The man tried to play dumb, saying he was not following anybody and that this must have been a mistake. He could tell that Lengmo was strong and he was not able to get his hand off him. Lengmo told him he was lying and that he had panicked after seeing him disappear. The man accused him of assaulting him, pointing out that they were in Skyway City and that arbitrators would tie him down if he went any further. Lengmo asked him if his employer had not told him that he was an arbitrator himself. This was bad news for him. He didn't know if he was going to kill him. Suddenly, Lengmo shoved him into a portal and told him to not even think about running away. The man started panicking and asked him what he wanted from him and where he was. He noticed that this was his space and asked him if he was a spatial user. He tried to convince him that he hadn't followed him, but Lengmo didn't listen to a word. He asked him if Brunate had sent him. He ordered him to stop denying it and explain why he had sent him. The man insisted that he wouldn't tell him anything and dared him to go ahead and let him die. Leng Mo saw him trying to act tough and told him to look behind. He turned around to see a pack of wolves ready to jump on him. Leng Mo told him they would tear him apart if he didn't tell him everything he knew right now. The man couldn't believe that he had silver wolves with him and told him to just kill him. These words were enough for Leng Mo to understand that Brunate was behind all of this. He asked the man if Brunate had sent him to check his identity, but he had ended up getting caught instead. He added that if he wanted to die all that badly, then he could happily be the wolves' lunch. Before the man could respond, the wolves had pounced on him and began tearing him apart. Leng Mo tried to assess the situation. He had underestimated Brunate. He figured he needed to transfer himself to the dwarf tribe as soon as possible. He asked Phoenix if there was anyone else following him. Phoenix dismissed it, meaning it was time for him to go. He arrived at the tribe underground. The dwarves were glad to see him and thanked him for leaving Silver behind to protect them. He had already managed to defeat numerous monsters while he was gone. Leng Mo was impressed and informed them that he had brought materials for the transportation circle. He told them they didn't have time to wait anymore and that he would set up the circle right now. The chief was relieved they could finally leave the place, and her soldier thanked him. Leng Mo went ahead and set up the transportation circle for the dwarves. After setting it up, he rode Silver back to his original tribe. Once he had arrived, he explained the entire situation to his grandpa, and he immediately agreed to let the other tribe join. He then set up a transportation circle in his village, and the underground dwarves were transferred one by one. Once the transportation was complete, he started discussing their next plan of action with the two chiefs. He informed them that Brunate had gotten hold of the orc's holy book, as well as 2 of the dwarf's holy books. This was extremely bad news. The grandpa chief deduced that they could only confirm he knew the secret behind those books. He told Grandma Chief he had something to ask her, and inquired if she knew where the human holy book was located. He wanted to know if it was in the Fragrant Wind Empire. She told him it was a possibility, and it might have been how he had heard of the secret. But since the Sunset Empire was the most ancient empire, it was most likely over there. The name brought back some memories for Leng Mo. Grandma Chief asked if something was wrong. He recalled all those years he had been at war since leaving the dwarven village. She told him she actually had one more request for him and asked permission to state it. He gave her the go-ahead, and she told him that she wanted to give him the last dwarf book for safekeeping. She was afraid that they wouldn't be able to keep it safe with them. They had always been hiding and weren't even capable of fighting at all. She told him they would feel more secure with him protecting it. Leng Mo didn't know what to say. Grandpa told him to just take it. He was the guardian of the dwarves, and they all wholeheartedly trusted him. He accepted her request and told her he would keep it for now. She informed him that she also had an item she wanted to gift him. It was a divine weapon that had been passed on for generations. She pulled out a small item, revealing it to be a charm that had been crafted by a divine dwarf crafter. He had apparently hidden a set of divine armor inside. They were not going to be able to wear it anyways because they had no aura, so she asked him to keep it so he could protect himself. Leng Mo received it from her and thanked her, saying it was a masterpiece. She asked him to try it on, explaining that it would adjust according to the size of its user. He did as she told, and heard a click from the charm. Suddenly, the charm let out an intense amount of energy. All of his doubt had been cleared from his mind, and he confirmed that it was definitely a divine weapon. Grandma and Grandpa Chief were amazed. The charm shape shifted and wrapped itself around Leng Mo. After a moment, he was fully covered in a set of dazzling armor. Back in the Fragrant Wind Empire's royal palace, Brunate had received the news that the spy he had sent was dead. He asked his subordinate if he had found his body. The man informed him that he had not been able to find anything, and guessed that his body had most likely been taken away by Leng Mo. Brunate understood that Leng Mo was already aware of him. He figured that he must have approached Caesar in order to get to him. He told the man he was dismissed and ordered him to stop spying on Leng Mo. Once Leng Mo had settled things in the village, he headed back to Skyway City. After guessing Brunette's evil plan, he had been brainstorming ways to stop him. First, he needed to verify if the human's holy book was in the Fragrant Wind Empire. If it was located there, then the worst-case scenario would be that Brunate had already got hold of 3 holy books. Now the last book was with Leng Mo, and he knew he couldn't let Brunate get his hands on it. He arrived at Skyway City a few days later, and after talking it over with Bing Yu, he decided he would head to the capital of the Fragrant Wind Empire. Skyway City and Fragrant Wind City were relatively close to each other. Leng Mo and Bing Yu had to merely spend a day walking before they arrived. They walked up a magnificent staircase that led to the royal palace. Caesar welcomed them to the city. He told them he had been waiting. Leng Mo thanked him for patiently waiting for them. Caesar told him there was no need to be so polite and invited him in. Leng Mo noticed Sidila standing next to him. He greeted Leng Mo, saying it had been a while. Caesar explained that Sidila was actually his half-brother from the same mother. He was actually the Fragrant Empire's 12th prince. Both Leng Mo and Bing Yu were shocked to hear this. Sidilla admitted that he had never found the right moment to tell him and apologized. Langmo told him he should have probably asked for more remuneration when he had brought him here the last time. Caesar had noticed how far he had traveled and asked him to follow him inside to have a chat. He told him about how much he had heard about him from his brother. Sidilla had been acting like a princess lately, but after he had met Langmo, he completely changed. Now he wanted to train with the soldiers all day long, and he kept praising him, saying that he wanted to become someone like Langmo. He had recognized him during the 8th Academy tournament and was so excited that he had even registered for the arbitrator exam with him. Sidilla sighed, saying he was not strong enough since he had still failed the exam. Langmo tried to cheer him up, saying he had done great and that he was really impressed. He just felt like he had bad luck.